And restaurants don't really care about nutrition. They're all about flavor and repeat business. And for us, we care about both, because both are so important to our core foundations.
Creative Conversations.
Hey Zouk family, welcome back. It's another week talking to an industry expert, and this one is exciting for me because he's not just an old friend of mine, but he's an extremely successful sports and wellness entrepreneur. Pete Fisher created not just ATP Personal Training, but also Nutrion Kitchen, which is meals that are curated by fitness professionals, cooked by the very best chefs, and then delivered to your home and offices, which is perfect during this circuit breaker lockdown era. Very smart, a guy who knows the fitness industry better than any. Actually, the first guy to ever get me into a gymnasium, so I owe him a huge thank you. Pete, how are you?
Yeah, very well, thanks. It's just started a thunderstorm in Singapore, so I'm happy to be at home actually and talking to you. It's better than being called out. Thanks for having me on. No, it's good to catch up again.
No, man, it's a pleasure because we spent some time together. I know you as an excellent sportsman, a former professional sportsman. You're a guy who understands the human body better than most. You're a trainer that talks absolute sense because you're incredibly well read. And now you're a nutrition expert. How did it all begin?
I think it probably goes back to playing rugby at a decent level. I was always limited ability, but trained quite hard. So it was all about kind of maximizing my own potential. Fastest way to do that was actually, at the time, was probably by training in the gym and having that as something I was taking very seriously, but other people weren't. So trying to maximize in that area. And that led to a kind of lifelong passion for learning everything I could about health and fitness. I was originally in teaching. I transitioned to working in the fitness industry about 10 years ago, and subsequently basically I was working as a personal trainer in Hong Kong, and I was finding the thing that my clients were struggling the most with was actually sticking to the nutrition. People are always full of good intentions, but they struggle to execute. So actually creating and finding a tool that would help them with execution of a strategic plan that was tailored to them was really important. And when we looked around Hong Kong, there wasn't really much available at the time. So ultimately we decided that there was an opportunity here to release a product that would be genuinely useful for us as individuals, as coaches, and then also one that our clients could use as well. So we kind of knew that there was a client base sitting there waiting to be targeted and served, and it was really a case of finding out the best way to execute on that. And it's gone very well. Like, we started off serving 12 clients in Hong Kong, and we're now serving around 500 clients every day. So actually, it's more or less 700 clients in Hong Kong every day. So it's grown like massively from day one, and probably above and beyond what our initial expectations were. I think we probably had quite narrow-minded views about what the potential audience was, what the potential client base was. I think when we first launched, we thought we were almost more of a fitness brand, and I think what we've seen over time is that we've evolved to be more of a wellness brand, and you can see that in how our branding and how our logos matured over time. So we were finding that our clients from the gym were taking our meals in to work, and it wasn't necessarily just purely appealing to gym goers. It was just people who were working in an office and wanted a healthy, good tasting meal delivered to their desk. So that idea really caught hold, and I think in Hong Kong we became ubiquitous with and very heavily associated with the idea of meal delivery, and almost kind of a byword for it. So I think we had that kind of marketplace leadership in Hong Kong from quite an early stage, and that definitely helped. And I think also the fact that we're so heavily from the fitness industry gave us a broad network of influencers almost before that was a thing. So we had people in Hong Kong who had access to all of their clients who were genuine users of our food and our meal service, and didn't hesitate to actually suggest that their clients use the service as well. So it really grew like that, and we're now entering a stage where we're a bit more focused on running it like a genuinely decent sized company, where we actually pay much more attention to our logistics, pay attention to our customer service side, pay attention to our marketing, remarketing, targeting, and it's really kind of scaled up along the way. But at its core, it was just something that we wanted ourselves.
Can I ask you, Pete, was there a natural transgression to move into Singapore? Do you see a likeness in the marketplace, or how did you end up in Singapore? Because now you're booming in Hong Kong and you're becoming a huge success in Singapore as well.
Yeah, so my previous role, like before opening ATP, I was managing a different gym group in Hong Kong, and I was always aware that Singapore was a bigger market for that particular gym chain. So it was always in the back of my mind that would be a great market to try and penetrate in some way. So with Nutrition Kitchen, it was a case of finding the right partners in Singapore, and then just moving from there. And it's something that we've seen really taken off this year with being a very kind of pandemic-proof business. That wasn't something we set out to create. I mean, we deliberately set out to have quite a low footprint, to be a relatively lean operation, to be very sustainable in how we operate with very low food waste. But we didn't obviously we weren't really thinking in these terms, but it's benefited us massively, because whilst other restaurants are struggling to transition to online as a driver for them, at the same time as having to maintain staff on salaries and pay rents, we've been relatively well protected because we have this essentially almost like a cloud kitchen, or our own kitchen space that and no storefront. So it hasn't really impacted us at all. And COVID's kind of aligned two trends. So it's aligned this work from home environment with an increased emphasis and awareness around health and around the impact that nutrition can have on people's health as well. So even though people are at home in their kitchens, a lot of the time they're working from home, then their schedules haven't necessarily freed up anymore. So I think a lot of our growth in Singapore over the past year has been, I think we would have grown substantially anyway. However, I think COVID's accelerated that growth cycle for us.
It's a perfect setup. Your company, the meal delivery system, is a perfect setup for this lockdown scenario. However, what I find so appealing about it, especially for Southeast Asia, and I include Hong Kong into this equation, it's about this healthy food. Because one of the biggest struggles for me when I moved to Southeast Asia, and I've lived in Singapore and Malaysia, was being able to find a wide variety of healthy food. Because you might find one particular restaurant that focuses on salads or vegan food or what you would call organic food. But the wide variety just doesn't exist. And you manage to do that because it's not the same boring meal every day. You have various recipes. You offer a variety for people over the course of the week. And I've got friends who have signed up in Singapore who are absolutely loving it.
Yeah, I think we fit into the market in quite a unique way. There's obviously a surfeit of delivery apps available to people. And I think there's actually an element of this kind of tyranny of choice where people have too many decisions to make every single day. So the last thing people want to do when it comes around to lunchtime is actually get on, decide which app you're going to use, surf through, find the best offer. Then you have to find the restaurant. Then you have to surf through the menu and then find the meal that you want. And then you don't really have any way of knowing what the macronutrient content of that meal is. And your nutrition is going to take a back seat. And restaurants don't really care about nutrition. They're all about flavor and repeat business. And for us, we care about both because both are so important to our core foundations. So what we really wanted to do was make it so that kind of elevate healthy eating so that it becomes this varied experience where people are surprised at the amount of flavor they're getting from the food and almost surprised that this food can be healthy. We're not very faddy as a plan. We're very, very mainstream. We don't have a particular dogma with food. We're not keto. We're not paleo. We're not vegan. We present pretty well balanced meals. We have two options. We have balanced, which contains a source of carbohydrates directly from say rice or potatoes or sweet potato, and then we also have our low carb option, which still has some carbohydrates, but they're mostly from vegetables. And so what we wanted to do was just give people an option where they weren't eating chicken breasts and broccoli every day. They're still able to enjoy the same level of results that people who are eating chicken and broccoli every day experience. So it was all the benefits of being into health and fitness, all the benefits of being obsessive about meal prep, with none of the downside, with none of the hard work, and just passing all of that onto us. Again, surprising thing for us in Hong Kong and Singapore, because food cost is relatively high versus someone like the UK, lots of people actually found they were saving money by ordering our service versus casually eating out a few times a week and then cooking at home in the evenings. By the time they'd actually gone out, bought the ingredients, gone to a few restaurant lunches, they spent above and beyond what they would actually spend on a week's meal plan with us. So it ended up being kind of a money saving option for a lot of people as well. I think another big benefit is just not having to think, being able to switch off and just go, okay, I've made one good decision, and I've made it, I make that one good decision on a Friday when I order my meals, and then I don't have to make another decision for another week. And if you want to book in for longer, you book in for a month or 10 days. Well, we were concerned initially, we thought maybe people will push back and want more choice, but that's never really been part of the feedback that we've received from a lot of clients. We're always looking to expand our menu. We're always revisiting based on customer feedback, and we'll cycle through different dishes. At the moment, we've got 6 weekly cycles. So we do five days. We do Monday to Friday, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We have some options. We have salads and sides that people can sub in on various days. And there's a degree of customization, but ultimately it's like a set menu, and people just sign up for it for the duration.
Well, first of all, thanks for going through that, because you do identify various factors which I think are really important in day-to-day life. I mean, decision fatigue is a major issue. It's why Mark Zuckerberg wears the same outfit every single day.
Yeah.
Because the last thing he wants to do first thing in the morning is have to fret over what to wear. Secondly, the nutrient makeup of a meal is something that we don't think about. It's amazing how long people will spend standing inside a supermarket looking at a packet of something, but then when they go and order a pasta dish in a restaurant, they won't even think twice about what it is, with a glass of wine, with a soft drink or anything else. So I think that's 2 major factors that you've managed to tick off the box, and the ease that it is to, I mean, I like meal prep. I'm old school like you. When we were at Exeter University, we had the luxury of time, and we also like to buy mass products like pasta and rice and make the same meals out of that one item. But many people nowadays don't have that time. And after you've worked for 12 hours, you finally got home, you're knackered, you want to go for a run, and by the time you finally exercise, you've got home and it's 10 o'clock. The last thing some people have the time for, or the requirement, is to cook the meal, put it in the fridge, and hope for the best, whereas you eliminate that stress for them. So it's a fantastic product. Looking at ATP, I know you honestly as an excellent trainer, and I can say that from first hand. I know you have a very high profile client base of very, very satisfied consumers from the ATP Personal Training program, not just as yourself personally, but across your team. What is the ethos of ATP? Because obviously the gym space is a rapidly growing one. The wellness arena with spinning studios and so on and so forth is one that is booming in Southeast Asia. But I know that you're in huge demand, especially because you look at it from a safe and individualistic outlook, rather than just give the same platform to every single person that walks into the gym, which I find a lot of the mainstream high street gyms do. I know you've spent hours studying to focus to make sure that each of your clients is looked after as an individual and not just as a number.
Yeah, so our ethos really is, we talk about basic kind of taglines around the company and what we stand for. And one of them is fast results, sustainable change. And at first glance, those seem to be somewhat opposed. However, I found that if you don't get fast results with clients initially, you lose them. People come in and they have motivation, they're very pumped up, they want to get results. And you need to deliver on that promise very early on with people in order to get the buy-in to actually get the changes and make things sustainable in the long term. Where we try and make things sustainable, I think it's how we incentivize our coaches. I think it's how we frame the coaching relationship as well. I don't like the idea of it all being driven entirely by the coach. And I think the level of accountability shared between the coach and the client should shift over time. I think at the beginning of the relationship, a lot of the accountability and the ownership lies with the coach, because the client might not know the rules of the game. They might not know what the processes are. They might need to be in a position where the relationship's a little bit authoritarian and they just follow orders for a few weeks. Over time, that has to change, and it has to become more of a partnership. It has to become more of a collaboration. And as the client gets more confident with what they're doing in terms of actually executing, we frame our coaching around three kind of pillars. We call it DNA, and D stands for daily routines, N stands for nutrition, and A stands for activity. So once people are really nailing down these different segments and whatever their specific goals are within those buckets, then the client's in a position to actually own the process a little bit more. But it's really dependent on actually educating the client a lot along the way, and making sure that we're actually executing towards what the client's goals are rather than what the coach thinks the client's goals should be. So by the end of the relationship, it might start out 80% accountability with the coach. By the end, that should be 80% accountability with the client. That they should have a real sense of ownership over what they've achieved and what they're trying to sustain over the long term. Otherwise, what you end up with is kind of almost this very transactional relationship, which is almost like you're going in for an operation. It's like, I want to surgically remove 10 kilos of fat. But they might not actually pick up the lifestyle changes and the behaviors along the way. And it might be too far away from what their actual day-to-day existence is like previously. So you end up with someone who has a normal life that they enjoy. And then for a 12-week period, they build this kind of artificial fitness model life that they find very hard to reconcile with their day-to-day. And so I think not only is this unnecessary, it's also a little bit damaging, because even if you are successful with that approach, I think there's a danger that you actually create this kind of polarity that doesn't need to exist, where you're either socializing and popular and fun and having a good time, or you're 100% into your fitness. And I think for long-term sustainability, I don't think either of those are particularly helpful. I think what people need to do is find this kind of compromise and create their own compromise based on their own values, what they enjoy, how they enjoy eating, how they enjoy spending their time, how they enjoy exercising. And it's kind of a build your own adventure. And as a coach, ultimately, we give the guidelines and the principles and the education along the way. But to make it sustainable in the long term, so it lasts beyond the initial transformation period. So it goes beyond 12 weeks and becomes a 12-month, 24-month, 10-year project. The client has to really feel that they're in control. And if you don't understand what the principles are, what levers you can actually pull, it's very hard to genuinely get that sense of control. So part of what we try and do to differentiate is really build, one, we built a very strong education structure so that our coaches are comfortable with actually explaining these principles to clients and delivering them in a way where it's an appropriate level of information for the client at their stage in their journey. So that's been really, really foundational for us.
I think that's a phenomenal outset, an outlook. And you described to me the context that it's possible to train during the week and still enjoy a few beers on a Saturday night without having the impending guilt that you feel you're letting yourself down, or, oh no, I'm going to ruin 5 days hard work with one afternoon of fun with the guys. You've got to look at what is sustainable over the long term with your lifestyle that you enjoy, because if you enjoy it, you'll keep persisting with it. Whereas if you go through this mental angst, your progression is hampered by anxiety, which I think is great.
I think any stage, and I've worked with quite a few clients where this has been the case, where all their previous weight loss efforts, there's been a degree of suffering associated with it. And they've been and anytime someone's suffering as part of the process, I think they kind of feel that they need to pay themselves back with some rewards as well. And the truth is that you can still eat really healthy, great tasting food and maintain a social life and enjoy your training and make great progress. You don't have to completely sign up for the pro bodybuilder lifestyle. And even you look at someone like Ben Pakulski, who is an elite level bodybuilder. Even he doesn't want to be a bodybuilder. He's moved so far away from that kind of paradigm. He still trains, but his entire approach now is founded on longevity. It's founded on health. It's founded on becoming a better person, better businessman. And so you're even seeing people from that orientation kind of turn their back on it and move away towards something that ultimately is more sustainable and actually equips them for the rest of their life, because fundamentally bodybuilding is healthy up to a point, and then it loses contact with health, and it becomes a very specific direction that people are pushing in. So the average client, that we work with, they might be an executive, they might have three kids, they're working very long hours. They don't need to pretend to be a fitness model. There are some very simple principles that we can draw from the bodybuilding world. There's some very straightforward nutritional principles that we can extract, but we don't need to go all in on that lifestyle, because it just isn't appropriate for people. Fundamentally, you don't want to be the type of person who's living a life that is consistently at odds with what their value system is. So I think with nutrition, the way we try and layer it for our clients is understand what your strategy is, and then differentiate that from your tactics. So if you look at strategy, 99% of people's strategy is maintain a calorie deficit that you enjoy, where you're managing hunger and eating enough protein. That's pretty much it. That's the strategy for everyone, is maintain a calorie deficit for long enough. The tactics can vary, and actually is where people get confused, because they get hung up on a particular way of doing things. So if someone's had success with a keto diet or a vegan diet or whatever, if they don't understand why they had that success and what the principles underneath that were, then they don't understand how to reverse engineer that, or how to try a different approach and have a similar level of success. So the tactics are very, very flexible. And then underpinning that, so tactics can be number of meals you have, the particular dietary spin you have. Some people do better on a lower carbohydrate diet. Some people like to have a more balanced diet. Some people prefer higher carbs. There's a lot of stuff that can be left down to preference there. And then underneath that is just understanding very fundamental ideas around nutrition, making sure people actually understand that energy balance is very, very, very significant. And there's nothing you can do if you're not in a calorie deficit and your goal is fat loss. Secondly, it's managing hunger, understanding how protein impacts hunger levels, understanding how eating adequate fiber is going to make you feel fuller for longer, then understanding how the things outside of food impact how your body responds to food. So that's where you look at the daily routine stuff. You look at the stress management. Do people actually have a strategy for managing and mitigating stress, or are they just surrendering to it and being swallowed up? Do they have a strategy around sleep? Are they sleeping well? So things like sleep will impact hunger. If you're really stressed all the time, you're going to be hungrier. You're going to have less control over your decision making. So really try and simplify that nutrition process so that people can find something that is easy for them to implement on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and an ongoing basis for the rest of their life. And the thing is as well, so many people in Singapore and Hong Kong prior to COVID, actually, it's fair to say, travel all the time. And I'm sure we'll get back to a point where there's more international travel at some point in the next 6 to 12 months. And even if you're not traveling, you're going to want to be socializing at certain times. You're going to have different needs depending on what week or month you're in. So people need to have a system that's flexible, and people need coaching to understand how to operate those systems well. I don't like clients to come in and say, I'm not drinking now. I'm going to have 12 weeks of no booze. On the one hand, as a coach, it's a great opportunity because that client is cutting out a lot of excess calories. But from a long-term perspective, I'd rather that they were actually managing their alcohol content, assuming they actually want to continue to drink alcohol in the future. I'd rather they were managing their alcohol content under my supervision as a coach. So they learn strategies to mitigate that consumption. So they understand how to integrate social drinking or maybe drinking for work. So they actually learn how to integrate that into their daily routine. And so they understand that they can still make progress whilst having a few beers a week, whilst going to a barbecue on the weekend, whilst going to a kid's birthday party and having some cake. So I want people to understand it's not an all or nothing approach, which I think psychologically is the thing that really derails a lot of people. You'll have 100% commitment with Tupperware from Monday to Wednesday, and then they'll run out of prepared food on a Wednesday. They'll be stressed at work. They won't have time to prep. Thursday evening, the weekend begins, and you end up with a 4-day meltdown. So I think pushing people to the middle ground doesn't necessarily mean they get slower results, but I think it means they get faster, they get longer lasting results. They get more robust results that last for a long time versus the slightly fragile approach of shooting for perfection. which I try and steer people away from.
I think that's a very realistic, pragmatic view, and one that should carry through in all walks of life. I mean, we all have people who have phenomenally good intentions but don't see it through. The New Year's resolutions is a perfect example of, I'm going to do this, this, and this, and then by January the 4th, they're back to normal. But I think your approach is really useful for people in the form of wellness and fitness that are trying to make self-improvements. It's super easy after a session with a coach to be mega motivated and say, I'm going to make all these changes. And then, as you say, on Friday night, you get invited out and you go through this yo-yo or roller coaster of emotions that don't necessarily make sense. Whereas you're arguing for a much more pragmatic and honest approach, which is be realistic about what you want from your life, and let's pick formats that can make success within your own parameters, which is a lot more realistic, as you say, over a 12-year approach rather than a 12-day approach. Firstly, P, I want to say a huge thank you for taking the time to talk to us. I am always fascinated with what you have to say. I know you're incredibly well read, but your line of thinking is always on point. And so thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us, not just about your businesses, but about styles and also, as you say, direction that people can take, not just in the world of fitness, but in life. The second thing I want to leave with is, what's next? What's got 2021 got in store for you? What's the plans in the pipeline?
Well, it's getting busier. So, I mean, off the back of the kind of success in Singapore, we're now moving to a new kitchen facility, which we'll move into next month to satisfy the increased demand. In Hong Kong, we're already planning to move to a bigger facility so that we can actually handle the increased volume and increased demands. Like both locations, we really set our eyes on hitting around 5,000 meals a day in early 2021. So, we're also launching a new location in London for Nutrition Kitchen, which is very exciting, but it means a lot of kind of groundwork with our partners, going back and forth between, just to make sure that we're on the same page, making sure we're executing the dishes well. Obviously, in a perfect world, I'd be flying to London to be involved in tasting and to be involved in the rollout. That doesn't look like it's going to be likely now due to lockdown. So we just have to react on that. And it just means, rather than me going to tasting, it might mean sending family to go to tasting. It might mean actually we've got lots of Nutrition Kitchen clients in London who were based in Hong Kong and will actually be able to give us really strong feedback about the consistency of the food and whether the dishes actually taste the same. ATP is going to be consolidating in both locations in Hong Kong and Singapore. The downside of a gym is it's a physical location that involves close interactions between people. So in a pandemic, it's far less robust than a decentralized kitchen. So essentially both businesses were paused for a large part of the year. So business has been great. It's picked up really well since then. So we're looking to bring on new team members in both locations, continue to serve our existing client base really well. Again, part of that focus on longevity and sustainability with clients is making sure that people don't feel like it's a 12-week timeline and then it's on to the next client. So we want to make sure that people understand that, if people want personal training for the long haul, that we are technically equipped to deliver that in terms of variety within the training program and actually taking people on this bigger journey so that it doesn't just finish inside the gym. So it actually, big focus is this idea of beyond transformation, where when I say, look, what would you like to be doing? What's your highlights reel look like in 2 years' time? How can we make that happen for you? And so it's actually relating what we're doing in the gym to a broader perspective on health and a broader perspective on basically living well and getting outdoors and doing things.
Well, first of all, congratulations to the expansion, Pete. Great that you're moving into new cities, and you will be able to get there geographically soon enough. Again, thanks for taking the time. It's great to catch up. It's always great to listen and learn from you. You must be chuffed that Exeter did the double recently of both European champion and Premiership champions.
Yeah, that's been really good. I've enjoyed watching that, and my parents moved back down they actually retired down to Devon. I think they kind of fell in love with the city based on me being at university there and playing rugby down there. So they've retired down to Topsham, which is really nice on the estuary, and they're like the world's biggest Chiefs fans. So they're, I think, gutted they haven't been able to see any of the games, because it would have been nice to go just up to Ashton Gate to watch a European Cup final win. I think would have meant a lot to them. But it's been great. Like the Chiefs' environment and culture is second to none, and it's one of those things where I think it was a very strong background in how to build a culture. I think if you're coming from a bodybuilding world, I think you're uniquely single-minded, and I think you can, from that world, you can kind of lose sight of actually what makes teams and cultures function. Whereas I think what's really benefited me in both businesses is a sense of how to actually create a culture that endures and a culture that people want to be a part of. And a lot of that was down to Rob Baxter, who was my university coach for 5 years when I was at ex-university. So I think I was in the first team that he coached. So I had a lot of exposure to Rob in his early years. And I wouldn't say I'm surprised by the level of success he's had. I think his greatest strength is just has a huge understanding of like the dressing room and what's required and how those dynamics function and how to bring players in and integrate them really well into the team without disrupting or disturbing that culture. You see, like now Exeter's become this place that everyone wants to go there. Like you've seen with Stuart Hogg and Gray going down to Chiefs. You see they're actually attracting big name stars. And I think a large part of that is people just see something they want to buy into. They see someone doing things the right way and they think, okay, I don't care what it takes. I want to be a part of that. I want to be involved in it. So I know I love seeing that. It's been great. It's been one of the few positives, apart from the expansion, but it's been a highlight of the year for me.
I think you summed it up well, and culture is invaluable in this day-to-day life, and building a cause and a purpose for people to buy into and experience and enjoy with each other. But Pete, thanks so much. Always a pleasure, but a huge pleasure for us. And I can't wait to train with you in person.
No, looking forward to it. It'll be good. Looking forward to having you in Singapore.
Take care, my friend.
Cheers.
Let me show you how it sounds like. Not only that it sounds great, it feels great with all the nuance you'd expect from the real acoustic instrument.